لو تخينا مزيس كنو فلنا نفريه بلنا كنتبع لنا سبسي أي تفرحي نحق فرح نزقيه فرحي.
Hi, welcome to Teddy Press show. The Ethiopian Prime Minister, Dr. Abiy Ahmed, recently said Ethiopia should get access to the Red Sea by all means. Many people, especially political analysts, scholars, and journalists, are now saying that there is a potential war in the Horn of Africa. Today, I have invited the president of the Eritrean Afar National Congress, Mr. Ahmed Yusuf Mohamed, to discuss the matter. Welcome, Mr. Ahmed.
Thank you, Teddy, for having us. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much. Let's get more information first about the ENC, Eritrean Afar National Congress first. So tell us what is the main aim and vision of ENC.
Yeah, thanks for that. The ENC is an indigenous political organization. Our aim is to establish a self-determination, internal self-determination for the Afar people inside Eritrea, in our home, coastal homeland. Our goal is to establish a political autonomy and self-rule in, like I said, in our traditional homeland, which is from the tip of Bori Peninsula to the tip of Rahaita. And that includes a territorial homeland, includes the islands of Tahlak and Ras Dumera. Basically, in the southern Red Sea of Eritrea, Dankalia. Our traditional homeland is called Dankalia. So that's what we are fighting for, to have a respect and dignity within our home territory. And by saying this, we claim we are also claim the rights of by claiming our rights, we are respecting Eritrea's sovereignty and as independent state, also as well as its traditional borders. We are not about to break up the country or by claiming our rights. So we are part of Eritrea in the main components of the modern Eritrea.
Mm-hmm. So what are you struggling for? I mean, what are you, first of all, before that, okay. So how old is your organization or your Congress right now?
So we had various Eritrean Afar movements. Mm-hmm. ENC was founded in collaboration with various diaspora Afar groups. At the beginning, the ENC, we had an organization called Eritrean Afar State in Exile. And by bringing Afar intellectuals and political activists and those to join us as EANC. So EANC was founded in 2018 in Brussels. Prior to that, we had different organizations, but this is the foremost Afar political organization working internationally with various political Eritrean and Eritrean groups and others. So that is basically about 6 years now.
You say in various, how many are you? How many groups are you getting together?
At that time, it was two groups. One group was functioning out of Yemen, and we were in diaspora. And also, we had some of the groups that previously belonged to the Red Sea group. So we had combinations of the Afar. So ENC was founded in collaboration with the rest of the Eritrean Afar groups.
Is there any other Afar groups left right now?
There are a group called Rasado. They are mainly in Ethiopia. I don't know the current status since the Ethiopia and Eritrea made agreements in 2018. Their status is I have not been following their activity that much.
Okay, so what is the main goal? What are you doing right now?
So we are basically working with, like I said, number one, our goal is to establish the Eritrean Afar self-determination, like I said, the Afar self-governance in Dankalia, in our traditional homeland, where the Afar are under ethnic cleansing and persecution by Eritrean government. We like to stop that, and we have took our case to international communities to protect the Afar civilians, the Afar rights, property rights, land rights, human rights. We work with international community, including United Nations Special Rapporteur. We have written various complaints and allegations, and our allegations were sustained. Eritrea was condemned because of that. We also work with Eritrean opposition groups. We are part of ENCDC group, and we work also with various activist groups like YACO. We work with recently Brigade Nahamadu, even though we are not too much into it, but we work with the other Eritrean groups that are our goals are to remove the current Eritrean regime.
You mentioned about allegations that you made about the Eritrean regime. What were the allegations that you made?
Well, like I said, Eritrea, as you may know, one of the most repressive countries that came about the current Eritrean regime, that is the PFDJ. So when the tanks of Eritrean PFDJ tanks arrived in our territory in Asab, basically the Afar, as indigenous people, we had a functioning economy. We had functioning political system through our customary laws. We had all of what is necessary. We had economic system that was linking the Afar, to have freedom of movement, to have the Afar pastoralist way of life. Our fishing economy was intact. So that when the Eritrean liberation came about in 1991, the Afar, of course, being part of Eritrean society, accepted the Eritrean independence. In fact, paid a huge price for the Eritrea independence to achieve its goal. But the PFDJ had a plan to destroy the Afar people from the get-go. 1991, they have decided to dismantle the existing systems, like I said, the Afar customary laws, the Afar functioning economy, the Afar identity. All of it came under attack. Just to give you an example, the Eritrean regime introduced the policies of introducing a new cultural identity for Eritrea, meaning existing cultures like Afar would not have a place to and recognize in the country. So, so Eritrea to us is a colonial entity that colonized the Afar people from day one to establish a military rule over Afar, our land being sold illegally to number of international agencies or international actors like United Arab Emirates, like China, like Russia, and like Australian corporations. So what we have seen is the removal, systematic removal of Eritrean Afar indigenous people from the potash-rich area, from the sea coast of the Assab area, from dismantling and destroying the Afar fishermen, kill the Afar fishermen as they go about do their fishing in the country, blocked all access of the Afar people from going to Yemen, from going to Djibouti and having relations with Ethiopia. So basically, colonialist Eritrean PFDJ acted like a colonial entity, other than freedom fighters that they claim to be. They changing the names. Colonials does what a colonialist does. You know, they come in and change your name, change your street names, rename it, rename your identity. Basically, it has been the story of our lives since past 32 years. So we documented all this into an allegation. We produced eyewitnesses to all these crimes, the land that was expropriated, the people that are displaced. All of it can be found in various neighboring countries, in Ethiopia, in Eritrea, in Yemen, in Ethiopia, in Djibouti, in Eritrea. I'm sorry, in Yemen. So this is to just encapsulate the atrocities of ethnic cleansing and deliberately attacking a system of governance. Like I said, when Eritrean tanks rolled into Assab, the Afar already had a political system. It used to be called Ras Gez, in Amharic means self-rule. When Mengistu regime was collapsing, the Afar were given autonomy in Dankalia. You may or may not know this, but from tip of Massawa all the way to the tip of Rahaita. So the Afar had a functioning political system for about 6 or 8 months. But prior to that, the Afar are, as indigenous people, have a recognition from international communities, including the colonialists. When Italians and the others, the Turkmen and other groups and other foreigners arrived in Dankalia, they respected the Afar integrity and a traditional rule. In many cases, they have signed agreements, which I'm going to send you later in the show. So in a nutshell, the Afar are being ethnic cleansed by the current Eritrean regime. And we have made this known to the international community, specifically to the United Nations. So the UN confirmed our allegation and have condemned Eritrea for it. So our goal, in short, is to remove this system, this cancerous system from our region that is not only hostile and discriminately colonizing the Afar people, but also get rid of this regime so that our region as a whole can be in peace, and whether it's economic engagement with Ethiopia, whether it's other relations that Eritreans want, the personal freedoms and group freedoms in Eritrea. So that's what we are all about.
Yeah, Mr. Ahmed, we all know, as they said, whatever you are mentioning in Afar, for example, as you know, the Eritrean regime committed, persecution, crime against humanity in a widespread and systematic manner for decades now, the same like what you have been mentioning right now. So what are the crimes that the Eritrean regime committed on the Afar people beside the rest of the Eritrean population? I mean, all the things that you are mentioning have been happening in all ethnic groups in Eritrea. So what made you to call it a colonization? I just want to understand you better.
So let me just refer to a text from United Nations Commission of Inquiry in 2016 here. So it's stated here, the Commission of Inquiry, the killing of Afar ethnic group and reported of existence of mass graves have also triggered their displacement from their lands within the country across the borders to Ethiopia and Djibouti. This has posed a great difficulty to their livelihood as they depend on their traditional land for sustenance as indigenous ethnic group. And it goes to say the land traditionally belongs to the Afar and used by the Afar was seized in a framework of land reform and afterwards by decision by the government of Eritrea without the consultation of the impacted Afar community. This is just to give you the systematic way of how Eritrean regime targeted the Afar. Like you said, widespread human rights violation from coast to coast in Eritrea. But what we're saying is, number one, the Afar had their own functioning ethnic indigenous rule in the area that is called Dankalia prior to Eritrean existence. This is something that has been documented 5,000 years in this region. You know, when the colonialists arrived, Italians arrived, for example, the Afar first came to the Asab. They arrived and they made agreements. Some of the history that is shared with the Eritreans and Ethiopians, mostly by Ethiopian at that time, was the Afar Sultanate sold the Asab to Italian colonists. That's not a fact. That's not true. Like many colonialists, like when they arrived, they have signed agreements with the Afar, and we have those agreements to show to you later. So the specific crimes, for example, that you mentioned, is to dismantle the Afar customary laws. For example, the land is governed and shared with the indigenous Afar rule constitutional law called Mad'a. Mad'a means you have authority over the certain area in your customary traditional lands. So the Afar societies can be governed and shared wherever that land to share the land. So the Shabiya regime came in right away. They said this customary law is archaic, is very old, and is in fact is colonial. So we need to dismantle it. So they take away the Afar's right to the sea, to fish, to the land, to farm, to salt mining that Afar traditionally use as exporting salt. All of these were taken in this specific land proclamation that Eritreans introduced in 1994. It's in a land reform. So the power for the Afar to govern themselves through how to live off their territory and land were taken by a systematic means. So Eritrea used this specific crimes against Afar, specifically Dankalia. You may this is I have not heard. You can enlighten me if you heard this, but this is not happening in other parts of Eritrea. So another thing is the like I said, the Afar traditional leaders, one by one, have been systematically eliminated by the regime. So the Afar do not have someone to speak for them to defend their rights, including the sultans were forced out of Dankalia, the existing sultans. For example, Sultan of Biru, one of the most foremost anti-colonial sentiment that was anti-colonial struggle that was waged against the Italians were led by the Afar Sultan Yasin Haisaba, for example, in Sultan of Biru. So his descendants were forced out of Dankalia, and people like Mohamed Omar Akito, who were the first pioneers of Eritrean liberation struggle, died in exile in Yemen. So all of the Afar sultans and traditional leaders that could have traditionally led politically, socially, economically the Afar societies were forced out. And the mass graves that the United Nations talking about have, because of the Afar relations that had at the time of Eritrea's independence, the entire border communities, including those in Assab, were put together and was massacred in 1999 inside Assab. So all of it to say is that this regime had a deliberate agenda to colonize the Afar people so that the Afar remain powerless, economically marginalized, politically oppressed, so that they can further their agendas. So it is a special crimes that have been taken in Dankalia, and this is what is making the Afar unique in its stance against the Eritrean regime.
I understand what you are saying, Mr. Ahmed, but I also believe that it happened similar crimes in other ethnic groups as well. I mean, you know about the Tigrinya part of the population, for example, it happened.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we had our own traditional laws and a lot of cultural and religious, and all these things has destroyed by now.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the part of that you were saying that the colonization is that part is which I didn't understand, because it means that all the ethnic groups in Eritrea could say that the Sha'abia is colonizing us altogether.
I mean, rightly so.
I see Shanati is saying now here, which ethnics didn't face the same situation in Eritrea by Sha'abia regime, she said.
Okay, so I understand the sentiment, but the fact that we are talking about the Afar region, we speak for the Afar people. We can only share what we are going through. For example, the customary laws in highlands of Eritrea, maybe in Tigrinya, are still intact. The language of Tigrinya is flourishing since the independence of 1991, since the independence of Eritrea. But when you look at the Afar language, we hardly have any opportunity to speak our language. We don't have as international the national media. We don't have a newspaper. In fact, the Afar alphabet and the Afar system that was there were destroyed. Speaking of the customary laws, like I just said, I don't know what I think it's called in the BAT. Correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah. The customary father's law or something like that in Tigrinya. But this is still the land expropriation, the system that Eritrean regime introduced to take the lands away from the Afar people, for example, cannot happen in the highlands. If that were to happen, the elders of the Eritrean highlands would have a customary laws. For example, in many societies, these are traditional way of life that govern the system. So in highlands, I'm not too sure about highlands. I've never been to the highlands, but the way the land farming, for example, the farming system, and we saw this during COVID. When the Afar fishermen, as you know, the Afar have no farming like in the highlands. Our farm is the seacoast and the Red Sea. So when the COVID time, we saw the government providing tractors and food from that were donated from Eritreans in diaspora. But what the regime was doing in Dankalia was to take away the boats, the fishing boats that the Afar people have, to starve them. We tried so many times to send food to Eritrea, and those who were in the middle were frightened to give. And at the same time, so this is to tell you that the crimes are not equal. I know many of our brothers and sisters, Eritreans, brothers and sisters, are saying this is an equal opportunity oppressor. It's oppressing Eritreans in general. But the fact that they have used the Afar territory of Dankalia for their economic benefits, for all natural resources that Dankalia has to offer, the potash, the selling of support to the United Arab Emirates, all the strategic interest, the geopolitical significance of our region made the Afar a specific target for Eritrean regime. So this is why like 3/4 of our population have fled Eritrea since 1991. So this is why we're saying the crimes are not equal. Yes, all Eritreans.
I think we should not compare here, because I also know that the Eritrean regime is, selling the mines in Kebesa, also in the Tigrinya speakers regions, for example, in Duarwa. There is also in the Beleza area and other places also. He's doing the same thing in other regions as well. But anyway, we should not, the Eritrean regime has been, inhuman, has committed a lot of crimes in Eritrea. Not only in Eritrea, as you know, also he has committed kind of genocide in Tigray right now. So that's we leave it there. I understand. I can say that you are also facing the same problems as the rest of the Eritrean people. But anyway, so what is your Congress practically doing to stop this kind of crime of the Eritrean regime committing on the Afar people or the rest of the Eritrean people?
Yes. So as far as the work we do, like I said, I mentioned the documentation of the atrocities against the Afar to the international community, specifically to the United Nations. Aside from that, we have joined hands with Eritrean opposition, like you saw, like I mentioned. So we have drafted a constitutional model, for a for transitional democracy. And we have reached out to various Eritrean political groups, civic society groups, to accept the Afar model and to work together with us. That the Eritrea that the PFDJ introduced for us is not sustainable for all of our segments of our society. So we have drafted a constitutional model that respects all of our ethnic identities, our traditional and customary laws, our land rights, on our rights to self-govern ourselves in our territories. This is not just for the Afar model, but we think this model will fulfill the aspirations and demands and the rights of all our Eritrean people. And the document was introduced in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. I know you have spoken about this. You and I spoken about this when we had this conference in July 1st.
Yeah, we made a program.
Exactly. So this document is signed by 32 Eritrean opposition groups, personalities, and this is what the way out of this criminal PFDJ system. The way to have a common understanding of Eritrea. Eritrea is a multinational, multi-ethnic, multi-religious society. The only way to live together as Eritreans is to respect the rights of all of us, including those who claim the atrocities, just like Afar and Kunamas and others, who have been systematically targeted by this regime, just because just because the Afar identify themselves as indigenous group that have been living and governing this land before Eritrea was even conceived as a nation. So our rights can only be respected if we have a decentralized constitution that respects regional autonomy for all Eritrean regions of 8 to 9 regions, so that we can live in peace. We can share the wealth of areas such as Dankalia and other part of Eritrea as an Eritrean society. And this is how democratic nations have governed themselves. We think Eritrea is no exception. And we, of course, you may have heard me oppose the 1997 constitution that was drafted and shelved by Isaias Afwerki. And we think that that constitution does not fulfill the aspirations and self-determination rights for the societies like Afar. So we have a replacement for that can Eritreans can see themselves in and sign on to this kind of model that will govern all of our societies. So this is part of the work we've been doing with opposition groups as well as international community.
Okay, let's talk about the current situation. We will talk also about what Prime Minister Ahmed recently said, that Ethiopia should have an access to the Red Sea. I also know that you wrote a letter to Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed back in 2018. Can you tell us what was, I know you sent me, but we will share it also as well. What was your message and the response of, if he did respond to?
So the content of the letter at that time, it was 2018. This is the peace agreement that happened between Abiy and Isaias Afwerki, as you may know. And we wrote a special letter to him, basically saying what we have been discussing here, that the Afar have specific grievances in Eritrea. The Eritrean regime has basically introduced genocidal policies and colonized us. And what we said to Abiy at that time, just like the international communities have been saying to him at that time, saying, listen, we welcome the rapprochement, we welcome the opening of relations with the Isaias Afwerki, just like the Nobel Committee and others, international community accepted Abiy at that time to be, some kind of new leadership that maybe have a lasting peace between Eritrea and Ethiopia. So we wrote to him expressing the grievances of the Afar people, and we also mentioned the land that at that time also they were talking about ASAP and other economic integrations, and we said, listen, this land and territory is currently under colonial rule of Isaias Afwerki. We must, the land that was taken away, including the ASAP, is uncompensated, and the Afar are uncompensated for their lands. The traditional land rights were taken. So we wanted to we said to Abiy at that time, there is areas, some details of part of Eritrea that have been under crimes against humanity and an investigation. So we wanted to say Ethiopia do not want to help the ethnic cleansing of Afar deliberately or unconsciously by signing peace agreements with Isaias Afwerki. So we cautioned the Ethiopian government at that time, just hear what the Afar are saying, and if there were any possibility for Eritrea to have access to the port of Asab, the Afar need to be consulted, and share of the revenues that are generated from the dealing with the Eritrean regime should go to the Afar economic development and should be part of negotiation. The Afar should be part of negotiation. That was the content of the letter at that time, basically.
Did he respond to you or no? Or any?
We haven't heard anything back, and till this day we have not heard. This was done from what do you call through the embassy here, so we have not heard anything back.
Okay, good. Thank you so much. So how did you find Prime Minister Ahmed's speech when he said that Ethiopia will acquire a Red Sea access and its resource by all means, either by peace or by force?
Yes. I mean, we heard the speech like many Eritreans or Ethiopians or any regional people have heard it. And again, this was not the first time we heard this kind of speech. This was by Prime Minister Abiy recently, but I remember when Isaias visited Ethiopia, Addis Ababa, what we isu Isaias gar Nikafalo Aseb Yonal. You remember that speech saying that we will share Aseb with Isaias Afwerki. Again, the issue have been from coming in from not just elected officials, of course, the political groups, especially the Amara groups, have been advocating for the ASAP to return to Ethiopia. And we say again, what we say to the regime, the current Asmara regime, we're saying, look, this land is not a no man's land. This land had the owners, like I said, since 5,000 years. The Afar are the legal and traditional owners of Assab, including not just Assab, but the entire Dankalia coast. So if Ethiopia or any other government, for example, were interested in having a peaceful agreement with either current regime or future regime or any Eritrean ports and Afar ports, we need to be consulted. This is what we said in the press release to the most recent press release to Ethiopian government, was that they must respect, they must recognize the territorial rights of Afar people, Eritrean Afar nation, in access in their attempt to access the port of Assab. And we alluded to the crimes that have been taking place. This cannot be pushed aside as if there's nothing happened in Eritrea since Eritrea became independent. Basically, the grounds and the sea coast and the port of Assab is a crime scene that need to be taken seriously. If Ethiopia were to use this port, the serious discussion with Afar leaders need to be consulted, including our organization EANC, and that the obstacle for all of it is that the regime in Asmara, this regime has to be removed. And we said in our press release that Ethiopia need to work closely with the opposition groups that to dislodge and remove this cancerous regime from among our midst. So that's it. That's what our press release was about, to respond publicly to the Ethiopia's stand against in their attempt to access the port.
I see that your press release was written October the 20th.
Yeah.
So have you heard anything from the Ethiopian government or no?
No, we haven't. Again, there is, we are hearing some discussion going on through various channels, and we have conveyed our letter through some of people who are working closely in the Afar region of Ethiopia. And we have, I know, some kind of discussions going behind the scene, but we are not in privy to say this. We have not heard anything concrete, but even if that should be a discussion for coming days or whatever it takes. So, but they know what the Afar feelings are, especially the Eritrean Afar feelings about this land and about the access to the port. So we remain confident that Ethiopia will do the right thing by respecting the Afar rights inside Eritrea.
So have you heard what was the talking point?
From who?
I mean, he said there was some talk.
Yeah. No. I mean that the conversation is ongoing, and of course, I mean, Ethiopian government said that they are not about to invade Eritrea, and this is not going to happen in a military fashion, and just because we have power, we're going to take over country. So we have heard some issues like, conversations like that. But to us, the concrete point is, the core point is that the number one, the Afwerki regime is a cancerous regime, not only hostile to the Afar and Eritrean societies, but it's also hostile in what is happening in Ethiopia's affairs. As long as this regime, you mentioned Tigray, what happened in Tigray before, and is now happening in the Amara region. Tomorrow could be the Afar region, perhaps going to be a Somali region. It's going to happen as long as this regime is in power in Asmara. Ethiopia or Eritreans or Ethiopians cannot live in peace. So the priority for us is to get rid of this regime by all means necessary, and then have a diplomatic relation that is beneficial to Ethiopians and Eritreans. So that way, we have said that before, and we continue to say that we are not against Ethiopia using the port. Ethiopia, like you said, the population is growing. They need a port, but this has to be in discussion, in recognition of people's rights, in discussion with Eritreans, not the regime, but we have to see beyond the regime, because the regime's days are numbered in the region. The regime can be removed tomorrow, but we want these relations to be respecting the rights of Afar people, as well as the sovereignty of Eritrea, and this can be achieved through negotiation by sitting down and have these kind of agreements.
Mm-hmm. Could you tell us who were participating on that meeting in Addis Ababa? Do you know anything about what kind of groups were they present?
No, I have no information on that. I don't know. I mean, these discussions are going behind the scenes, but I cannot say that so and so was part of that meeting.
So the information that we got so far is
this is happening in the Afar level. I'm talking about the Afar to Afar level, but it's not. I don't know if the Prime Minister was consulted. It was this information was given to him, but we made what the Afar feelings are, Afar grievances are, through our press release, and we shared this press release with our contacts in Ethiopia, so to convey this message to Prime Minister Abiy and other Ethiopian officials. And we have had some communications with other officials and outside the country as well.
So the letter that you conveyed were Afar. Were they from your own Afar group or different?
I'm not in liberty to say that at this moment, but that conversation is going, and it's premature for me to speak about it now, since this information is recent and the conversation is going behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm. But as you mentioned also that we know that the Prime Minister has consulted with some. We heard that there was an Afar group, and there was some other also from the Eritrean opposition group, which are supporting the Eritrea unification.
Yeah, we've heard that from various news agencies. In fact, Abiy was today in the Afar region. I don't know if you heard that. He met with the Afar leadership in Afar state. I think basically it was a development, a cultural, agricultural development that the Afar state has to do. But I don't know if this discussion happened. The issue of ASAP and access to Red Sea was part of the agenda, but I know the Afar region is aware of this, our letter, and I'm sure the Ethiopian government have seen it by now, and we are looking forward to hear some positive feedback from it.
I know you mentioned about what the Eritrean regime is committing crimes in Eritrea and in Tigray and other places, but the Prime Minister also doing the same thing, as he mentioned, in Amhara, in Oromo, in Tigray. I mean, how can you trust Abiy Ahmed?
Well, you know what the funny thing about the politics in Ethiopia is it's so complicated. I mean, the regime, the Ethiopia itself is at war. I mean, you can see someone from outside can see there's a lot of issues that's going on in Ethiopia, but you know, as Eritreans, we have been in this catastrophic, unsettling human rights violation for 32 years, you know, and say what you want to say about Ethiopia, but it has been, the international community can see it themselves. You know, what is happening in Ethiopia can be in CNN the next day. But what is going on inside Eritrea has been blocked. We're being killed behind the scene, you know. So it's not for me to say, to comment on Ethiopia's atrocity and what is going on inside Ethiopia, you know, when we have so much going on in Eritrea. So it's not my place to basically speak about you know, the crimes. Of course, everybody is condemning what is happening to various human rights violation in Ethiopia, but we are just basically are concerned about what is going on inside Eritrea, and specifically to the Afars in Dankalia. Yeah.
So okay, you're saying that you are ready to negotiate with the Ethiopian Prime Minister. What would you negotiate with him?
Well, it's not negotiating, and we made two things clear. Number one, responding to the presentation in the parliament by Dr. Abiy, and like I said, this was not something new. We've heard about the claim about ASAP, and number one, for us to work with Ethiopia or in discussion, Ethiopia must recognize the legal and traditional rights of Afar people inside Eritrea. Okay, we're talking for the Afar in Eritrea. That's the first thing. The second thing is that we made known to Ethiopia is that the regime in Asmara is not something that would benefit Ethiopia in the long run. You know, and these properties that this private properties, including the port of Asap, is a legal property of Afar people. So the rights of Afar need to be respected. If Ethiopia would like to have the Afar to be part of this, we are more than happy to participate. And to, when it comes to Eritrea's current regime, we have shared our willingness to work with Ethiopia to remove this regime. So the regime in Asmara has to go first for Ethiopia to have a normalized relationship, not with the Afar only, but to have a relations with the rest of Eritreans and accessing the Red Sea. So these are two things that we made clear, and we, like I said, we hopefully these are heard clear and loudly inside Ethiopia by policymakers, and we look forward to working with them in this aspect.
Would you travel to Addis if the Prime Minister called you?
No doubt. Why not? I mean, this is a core of our founding principles, to have the Afar people live in peace. If I can show you a quick slides here, I don't know, some pictures here, Teddy, if you have time.
Yeah, go ahead, please. Yeah.
Okay, so let me share my screen. Okay, so basically, this is what we have talked about uh, as indigenous people. This is again explaining why we have the, is saying to Ethiopia, we have the legal rights to this land. Okay, I don't know if you see, this is a New York Times article here, 1934, I believe.
What does it say?
So this is the Afar fighting against the Italian colonialists. So what it says is Ethiopian troops movement around Musa Ali. This is one of the mountains. So it's talking about the Afar tribe. The Nakil tribes are continuously harassing the Italian positions at night. So this is basically a New York Times article in 1934. The sacrifice the Afar have paid in the area in Eritrea. Not only defending themselves inside Eritrea, but defending Ethiopia. Most of the history books, this is again colonial resistance, Afar resistance in Dankalia from 1800s to 1931. So basically, Ethiopia uh, or Eritrea per se have to understand this is a nation. This is Afar are a nation that pays enormous price to defend the territories, including the Assab, from the colonialists, from the Italians, from the Turkish Empire, from the Egyptians. All of these have came to attack the Afar people in this territory. The Afar have paid unparalleled sacrifice to defend these lands and territories. So the rights of Afar people, and this is again at the time the UAE was interested in stations in Assab, and the agreements that they have signed in Saudi Arabia, we would say again, Assab port belongs to Afar people. So we keep mentioning this is again the two elephants are fighting over the Afar territories. Like the African proverb saying, when elephants fight, it's the grass that suffers the most. The Afar people are the grass that's suffering the most. So what we're saying is we're not against the economic development. The only thing that is preventing Ethiopians 130 million, 100 whatever, 150 million in the future is preventing is the cancerous regimes here in Eritrea. As long as this regime is there, there is going to be conflicts. Like I said, part of Ethiopia and Eritreans are fleeing the country by tens of thousands because of this regime. So the hostilities and the instabilities of the region will continue as long as this regime is in place. So, I mean, this is historic documents, and this is this is basically what I explained, what is happening to Afar territory. This is potash exploration, illegal land grabs that are taking place. These are agreements that have been taken as happening in the Afar region. And look at this picture, Teddy. This picture tells you this is the Afar territorial. This road here is a road that leads Assab to Bure. It's a territory linking Assab to Ethiopia. These are the people we are fighting for. Look at how these people are impoverished, the most impoverished communities in Africa, let alone in the whole region. These are people that are their rights are being taken off. Look at the chart here. The Afar, one in Afar, like the life expectancy of the Afar child compared to Eritrean child and compared to Ethiopian or African child. So this is what is happening to our people, and this is something unacceptable in this day and age. So that people like Ethiopia and Eritrea are talking about just taking these people's right, push them aside, keep them impoverished. This is what we're saying. Ethiopia cannot do this. And this is our traditional way of life, the fishing coast that have been taken away by Eritrean government. And with the help of UAE, the bombardment of the Afar fishermen, hundreds and hundreds of Afar people died on their sea just to go to the sea to fish from the sea coast. I mean,
When
It's
was it, Ahmed? When was it
this
the
has
bomb?
happened in
UAE?
2000. Yeah, UAE. Remember, UAE arrived in Asab, took massive territory, salt mining, traditional Afar siting, salt mining, private property from the Afar people. The Afar people were approached the government and said, "What are you doing? Why are you taking our land?" And they told them, "Shut up, otherwise you're gonna face the same consequences as your other brother Afar have been vanished." So this land was taken by Eritrea and given to the United Arab Emirates in 2015. Soon after that, any Afar fishing boat that you see around here would not dare to go to the fish to fish in the sea. They would be bombarded by these helicopters, UAE helicopters, the Eritrean Navy, and they would be killed in a daylight. We've made this case to the United Nations. We made, in fact, a big protest here in front of UAE embassy here in Canada, to let the United Arab Emirates and Eritrean navies, they cannot kill the Afar people on their traditional homeland in their legal properties just because you want to rent the coastal territory. And this was Asab at that time, were given to UAE. So basically, we are coming to what Mr. Abiy is saying. This cannot happen in our watch. Okay, you can have all the sea access through the Afar traditional leaders, through the Eritrean democratic government, not with the Eritrean government. So basically, in a nutshell, this is what has been happening, and this is what we are advocating for. So we cannot be silent when our brothers and sisters continue to be impoverished, completely continue to be pushed aside. It's a crime. So the world community has to know what we are feeling, and so do our Eritrean brothers and sisters and Ethiopian people as well. So.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Mr. Ahmed. So, what can you tell us about the current situation in the borders? That we hear that the Ethiopian, the Eritrean governments are getting close their military soldiers and so on. So, do you have any information about that?
Yeah, I heard there's a troop mobilization in the other side of our side of Eritrea, and listen, Teddy, you and I know Eritrea is militarized to the teeth. Even if there was no disagreements between Ethiopia or Djibouti, this is a country ruled by a military gun. Okay, so troop mobilization is nothing new for us. This is how the country is run. So the ruling class, the PFDJ, can frighten the Eritreans from speaking up. So this troop mobilization is a continuous thing that is happening. I mean, it could be because of the recent development in Ethiopian parliament, but it could also mean business as usual by Eritrean government.
Mm-hmm. What do you think if they go to? I mean, if they continue fighting, what do you think will happen?
Hopefully, it's the demise of Eritrean regime in Isaias Afwerki. This is what we've been advocating for as Eritrea's democratic opposition, Afar, EANC. We want to remove this regime. We have had enough of 32 years. You see what the Eritrean population are, and especially the young. You can see the actions of Brigade Mohamed and others who are fed up with this government. At any cost, if there was any conflict, any skirmishes, the Eritrean people are ready to remove this regime. This means if Ethiopia allow this opposition to come into the country, we are more than happy to do that. So the priority for us is to remove this regime, establish a democratic system in constitutional governance for all of us to live in peace in our homeland.
Okay, thank you so much. I think we will conclude our interview today, but I'll give you a chance to speak if something you would like to add.
Yeah, nothing different that we have just said with this, guys. And I thank you for this opportunity to share our views and our feelings, our grievances with the Eritreans and Ethiopians. I know many Ethiopians follow your program, and my message to Ethiopian friends, what is right is right. What is just is just. The Afar and Eritreans are not against you having access to the Red Sea or Ethiopia's development. All we're saying is the rights of our lands and our properties need to be respected. We cannot simply claim this is natural rights for Ethiopia and push aside the people that live there. So have in your hearts to have this kind of what is happening to the Eritrean people inside Eritrea is unspeakable human rights violation. So keep in mind that these land and territories have owners. The respect for Eritrean sovereignty need to be taken into consideration. The rights of people like Afar, who have been marginalized and oppressed for all these years, need to be respected. So we don't know what this two governments will do, but all we're saying is the public, Ethiopian public, also need to take into consideration and to have these ideas, not unilaterally claim the land and territories and the ports belongs to them. So in a nutshell, that's my message to Ethiopian public.
Would you like to say it in Amharic for those who do not speak English, maybe? You want to say it in Amharic?
I don't know, Teddy. You lead me. You give us a conclusion so that maybe I can have something to say. But
yes.
I know you speak Amharic, so
I don't speak Amharic. Okay, so I think let's conclude then. Thank you so much anyway. Thank you, Mr. Ahmed, for your time and for everything that you are doing for our people. And we also thank you, our viewers, for today. And we'll see you some other time with other program. Thank you so much for.
Thank you.
No.
Thank you, Teddy.
Thank you.
لو طغينا مزيس كنوفا لنا نفريه بنا كنتبع لنا سبسي أي تفرحي نحق فرح نزقيها فرحي